Let's hop in. It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
You
It's
bet. So I
exciting.
I always begin my conversations with this question. 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing our lives, changing so many things about the way we live our lives. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you live life today?
Like I said, I heard you ask a couple other guests this question, and I'm almost embarrassed to say, for me, I called it the cosmic shutdown. Like I needed that time to not have to give any other attention to other aspects of life but myself. My
Yeah.
parents were like smack in old age. The last part that, is no fun for anybody. And I feel bad that that was at the end of their lives. But for me, it was when I discovered this self-help work. A friend referred me. It's called To Be Magnetic. And there were so many things in my life that I didn't have a clue how to come to terms with or reprogram, which it, it does help with all of that stuff. So I could really dive in and work on myself, and it was the best thing. That's what I needed.
So let's get into what you do for a living today. If I put you in front of a bunch of kids at career day, let's say they're 11 or 12 years old, and one of the kids wants to know what you do, maybe now or have a snapshot of your professional career, how do you answer that child?
I'm a writer. Um, I finished my first book, which was a lifelong project, and now I'm working on some fiction that could not have happened without that first book. Maybe I'm a creative. Um, my goal is to deliver hope and even some excitement for one's own future, um, to inspire you, young kid, to know that life is always going to change and there's always going to be good and bad ahead. Where you are right now will not be where you are in 10 years. And it's a good thing. You may not know what's down the road, but you can kind of weave a path where you're figuring yourself out and how you're going to deal with the big world out there, because it's a big world and it's complicated and it
Yes,
asks a
it is.
lot of us.
Yes, it certainly is. So, when you were that age, when you were young, what was your dream life? Was it always writing?
I didn't really have a dream life. I sound like the least ambitious person in the world. I wanted to play with horses and live on an island. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't, I think when I was a teenager going through some really yucky stuff is when my love for writing came about, because the self-expression that nobody else can see, you can say whatever when it's pen to paper. I wanted to be happy. I felt like that was kind of elusive, and I know everybody wants to be happy, but I didn't dream about being married. I didn't dream about kids or a guy, or I wanted to enjoy what was out there.
So, are you originally from Georgia? Is that where everything started for you?
No, I was born in Los Angeles, where I moved back and was a significant part of my life. But I was born there. Then my family moved to Panama City, Florida, where we lived right on the water, and it was the best years of my life, just playing pretty much. And then we moved to Atlanta, and that's where I see it went all downhill. But I came back here for my parents.
So, talk to me a little bit about your early years. What led you to get to this point to write your book, to be a writer, to find the strength to write the book? What were those kind of seeds that were planted into you that have become who you are today?
So, as a child, like I said, discovering the outside world was my happy place. But I didn't have dreams of being a professional. Um, and I was socially awkward, very anxious, fearful, couldn't regulate my emotions. And so outside of home and the outdoors was never a good experience for me. Other kids, um, my sister seemed very successful at whatever she tried to do. She was older, and I felt like a failure. Somehow, this led me down a path of, when I was 14 years old, I got my girlfriend, my best friend, to take a wrestling class with me, and I accidentally broke her ankle. So I had to test out with a boy. And according to her, at the test out, the boy looked at the coach and said, "Please, coach, don't make me do it." And I picked him up and I threw him down on the mat. And I don't know who that girl was, except she served me well later in life. But so I went on this path of being as wild and aggressive as I could. And that involved doing drugs. I wanted to be, my mom and dad were very conservative, church going, proper. This is how you do things. And I set out to do the opposite. And it got me in a lot of trouble and harmed myself a lot. And not physically, but the decisions I made could potentially have led to a lot worse. So my parents chose this place that was military, Christian based. It's called Straight Incorporated, and it was one of the abusive, they called it the troubled teen industry. And they did attack therapy, um, basically break you down as a human being, whatever you may have with your identity at 16 years old, strip that away. And their goal, they said, was to rebuild. Actually, they said it was to give parents their little kid back, which isn't impossible to me. You have to become a developing human being. So I was there for 2 years. Sometimes it was good, but being there, I had developed this rage that I didn't know how to talk about because we weren't allowed to talk badly about the place. Um, so after two, I made it to staff. I graduated, everything looked good, but something just never was right. And after 2 years there, in a bad way, I was terminated. So, and my parents were so all in. I was 18 and my dad didn't want anything to do with me. So they dropped me off at the airport and said, "See ya." So I had no social skills. Fortunately, some of my old high school friends were there for me and I got a place to stay. And, um, when I got out of straight, I could barely go to the bathroom without asking permission or get food or so, but I could speak and I managed to get a job and muddle along, but I was still very self-destructive because by then I believed I was this big as a human being and I didn't trust any decision I made. I believed I was incapable, and that lasted for a long time. I bounced around in 12-step meetings, but still with this rage that I just couldn't even put it into words. And so after that, in my mid 20s, I'd say was when I really kind of went into survival mode and um, got into prostitution, stripping, heavier drugs, a cocaine addiction, which I got toxic shock during that time, which was almost fatal. And after that, I knew I didn't want to die. That's when I started that's when I discovered Pilates. That was the first time in my life I felt like I had something to offer anybody, and that was this stuff I was learning. So I didn't believe me as a person had anything to offer, but at least I was learning this skill, and that for me was a turning point because I met people who really made me feel like I was giving them something back and I was getting fulfilled. And so I was in a relationship that wasn't great, and I took a break or moved out from him, and that's when I found triathlon, because I knew I needed some stimulation. I was either going to go back the other way. This was my way of finding a new way forward. I'd always been a runner and it sounded like fun. So, at that time I was back in Los Angeles, and that's a great place to do swim, bike, run year round. There's a big community, but I hadn't changed in my my lack of. I'm not one for groups. A lot of the social, I still feel kind of awkward, but I'm kind of okay with that these days. But so I did a lot of it alone, and I liked that, like the long miles on Pacific Coast Highway, blowing snot and feeling, and then I could feel these incremental, like badass endorphins, but it went through to my psyche. So I feel like all this physical stuff I did gave a part of me what was necessary to be building an individual. Because I still didn't want to get married. I still didn't want to have kids. I did want to be a writer by then. I went back to school and did pretty good, even though all my life I'd been told I wasn't that smart. I was starting to think I was kind of smart. And then I'd say, by now I'm already like halfway in my 30s. I did get to travel, so I got to see that the world is much bigger than my little space. And I think it was very helpful to me, to see meet new people who are living lives that didn't go along with this conservative ideal that I'd been raised with, to see that people are happy in many different ways. Um, and I don't know if I'm making sense, but
Yeah.
I've started to find happiness just in Pilates and doing triathlon, which can also be a hideout from life. Like I wrap myself, it was my new drug of choice, but it served me well. Um, and then through my 40s, I stayed as wrapped up in that as I could. And then I had gotten back with the same guy, and we had both been working on ourselves. And then when I turned 50, he died suddenly. And I had a lot of guilt and remorse over that. Um, and that's when I moved back from LA to Georgia to be close to my family. And it's when my parents were getting older, and I absolutely hated it here, but I knew I was supposed to be here for them. It was my time to be that kid. And that was really good for my self-esteem as well. So looking back, I feel like it took a long time, but I slowly built a resume of good things about me. Like I had gotten to the point when I was young to where anytime I screwed up, uh, which could be anything from not showing up at work to a weekend drinking and drugging, I'd get to where I could just say, oh, well, there I go again. Um, that's what I do, I guess. Along the way, I didn't mention that when I was 19, I got sick and I ended up with epilepsy. So that was another way for me to be retarded in my mind, because I had to go on really heavy medication that slowed my brain down, and um, kind of miraculously it went away in my 40s. But so then at 50, I moved across the country, and I thought about saying maybe I should just quit. Um, but I knew I couldn't, because I'd come so far just to be where I was at that point. And so focusing, I started working here, teaching Pilates, and focused on my parents, and and I worked out, and that was pretty much it till COVID, when I met a friend through, she was a Pilates client, and she happened to be a therapist, and that was a turning point for me. She's introduced me to this work, and I learned to be compassionate with myself, and which I'm still working on. But in the past couple of years, I mean, I'm 61 now, and I have to say, I'm the best version of me I've ever been. There was a time when I didn't want to be 30, and now I'm so grateful I made it to 60. So, um, no matter where I was, somehow I kept holding on. And
Yeah,
all I can say is never quit.
absolutely. So, who's been that inspiration for you? Have you had a hero in your life that's allowed you to navigate to this best place that you're at in life right now?
I don't know if I've had a hero, but I would say my sister was always an unconditional cheerleader, no matter what I was doing or going through. And my parents, I mean, even though they were always conflicted about me, they were always loving people. So, and I think that was really important that I had one, two, maybe three people always telling me that I could not quit. And then I met another woman in my 40s who had been through some yucky stuff. And she said to me for the first time anybody did, she said, "It's not your fault." And I was like, "What do you mean it's not my fault?" And she said, "Your life, the things that you've done is not your fault. It just was, things led you there, but it's not like you're a bad person and you deserved it." And no one had even put that idea in my head. So, and that was through Pilates. So I like to say Pilates introduced me to a new world of women, mostly who were very accepting and knew that a lot of us go through tough times.
Yeah.
So they're about boosting each other up. I mean, who needs another person to bring you down? So, yeah, my family and some select people that I feel like I've been blessed in friendship and love,
So,
which has
talk,
really carried me.
yeah, for sure. So, I'm curious with the book. When's the book come out?
I don't have a publisher yet.
Okay. So, was that difficult to write that book? I mean, with everything that you've talked about, did you ultimately get to a point that you found a catharsis with that process? Because it had to be painful to relive memories.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I started it in my late 20s, but it could not have been finished till it was
Yeah.
because I had to get where I was. Yeah, it was hugely cathartic. I could not, I don't think you can write it when you're in the midst of it. And then I didn't know where it was going to end. And it actually ended with me. So when I was a kid and we were in Panama City, Florida, and snorkeling, and that was my happy place. And that's what I found at 50 something was a place in the tropics. And I took up scuba diving right after I finished writing the book. And so, yeah, there was a full circle there. And finishing the book has helped me really close it. It's like it's done. I mean, the only reason I have to talk about it anymore is because I want to share my story and I want it to be of inspiration. It's not a story of sobriety or being a champion because I was never won a prize. It's a story of never giving up and giving yourself a little grace to rest in the good comfort that you do have, whether it's a person telling you they love you and you've got to keep going, or let them love you. Um, what did you just ask me? I'm
No,
sorry. I feel like
you answered. You absolutely answered. I was wondering inspirations, and aspirations, and I'm curious. Um, what has been that motor in you that's allowed you to overcome? You've overcome obviously very big emotional and physical things throughout your existence. And to get to a point where you're doing triathlons and you're taking care of yourself and you get to a better place where you're at in 60. What has been that engine in you that's allowed you to keep going, to keep that positivity and hope flowing?
I am extremely stubborn and rebellious, very hard-headed.
Yeah.
And those can be negative. They were negative for a long time. I mean, still, if something seems outrageous, I might say, I got to try it, but it's not going to be the same kind of thing. It's not going to be the riskiest move. I mean, as far as drugs or I don't know what else I would do now. Now it's all good things.
Yeah. 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 So, if you can meet one person alive on the planet right now that's gone through quite a journey, that's been inspirational, that you anybody on the planet that you could hang out with and talk to, who would you love to meet that might help you on your journey?
There are two.
Okay?
One of them is Cher,
Yeah.
and the other one is Pamela Anderson.
Yeah. She's gone through quite a transformation. Isn't she with Liam Neeson now?
No, they are not in a relationship.
Okay. Okay. I thought I saw that they were together, but I know that she's really rounded a corner in her life.
Yeah, and I admire her because, I don't know how you get a healthy ego. I don't know if you're born with it or if it's built, the self-esteem, but I never had that. And to be able to put all the stuff behind, like she has apparently been able to do, and just keep moving forward, I really admire that. And I would like to know what her secret is. If it's, like Cher always seems so confident, like, why wouldn't I do that? And
Uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah.
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight and you ran into the 18-year-old version of you and you had a big book in your hands and it was like a coffee table book and it was your life that you've lived so far and you handed it over and said, "This is how your life has turned out so far." Would there be any part of that young version of you that would believe it?
I think she would believe the bad stuff, but she wouldn't know what to do with the good stuff.
Would you give her advice?
I would give her advice with the knowledge that she may or may not listen. Um, but I would venture to say a few things that um, are not G-rated. For one, like sex can mess you up more than you could ever understand. Um, and that be careful. Sometimes you end up going too far and you didn't mean to. Um, but what do you tell an 18-year-old who's completely lost?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the link that you have to Robert Downey Jr.?
Oh, he did a podcast um, based on straight. So there were a couple years ago, there was Paris Hilton was in a program, and she got something passed to make them illegal. Um, she had come out, and then there was another documentary on Netflix. I can't remember the school that was about. And then Robert Downey Jr. produced this podcast. It was narrated by a woman named Cindy Etler, and she wrote a couple of books about being there. Um, I reached out to him, but apparently they didn't need to hear anybody else's stories.
Okay, okay. I was curious. I saw that in your bio. So I'm the one thing about being alive on this planet is that there's always these acts of kindness that other humans do for each other that can really change lives, that can give you hope for humanity. What's one of the nicest things that somebody's done for you in your life?
Oh my goodness. Um, Everything from my sister always telling me that I was special and she loved me and I should go write my book, to the friend telling me it's not my fault, to all the women I met in Pilates who told me that I had potential. And yes, I was a good Pilates instructor and I should keep going, to a professor at UCLA when I went back to school and I wanted to be a writer, and all teachers had told me I could never, my style was always wrong. This was the first guy that said, "No, you've got it. You've got something special." I got an A in that class for the first time in my life. And it really was a great boost. And he stuck with me and cheered me on for years.
So there's a lot of people that will live their lives and will never ever get close to thinking about doing anything like a marathon or a triathlon. So how scared were you going into your first Ironman triathlon? And what did it feel like when you completed your first one?
Okay. This is a whole nother. I was terrified of triathlons. I had run all my life. I'd done 10Ks and whatever. But I was terrified of this bam, competitive go.
Yeah.
I needed to like stand around and cry and like go, oh, I don't know if I can do it. And the first one, I started out with short ones. First one, I didn't even finish. Then I started building up the distance pretty quickly because I just liked being out there. I liked the all the endorphins, and I did well in some races, and I did shitty in others. And I didn't think I could do Ironman because of the epilepsy drugs, and then epilepsy went away, and so suddenly I could do the training. I never crossed the finish line at Ironman. My first year, I was standing in the start line crying. But my dad and my sister were there, and I did pretty well the first year. I made it to like mile 26 or mile 22 on the marathon, but I had less than an hour and I knew I wasn't going to make it. Second year, DNF'd off the bike. And then the third, I think I made like mile 20 in the run. And for a while, I was ashamed. Oh, I didn't finish Ironman, so I'm not an Ironman. But really, just getting yourself there and doing the training is a huge part of it. I would like to have crossed that finish line, but it's okay that I didn't because I got myself there. And it was a huge, for a little terrified, screaming kid to have be there at 11 o'clock at night on the 22nd mile of the marathon. It still felt really good. Felt like a different person. Um, to people who have no interest in that kind of sport, it seems insane. So for me to be in that group of outrageous with purpose, it felt great.
Yeah.
So
So digging in a little bit further into that notion, when you look back on your life of everything that you've overcome and evolved to, the successes and the failures and everything that you've lived through, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
that I am a healthy, insightful, kind, compassionate woman of this age when everything else would have led me to believe I would be a pretty beaten down, lonely, or, beaten down person if I made it to this age. Just the fact that I'm here, I'm really proud of.
Yeah. So, we are always on this eternal quest as human beings in this time that we have down here to maybe figure out the meaning of life or have that big question answered. What's the big question for you that you either want answered or you've already found an answer to?
I'm still pondering that. Um, I I I believe because of the things in our world that are important are things, their achievements, their money, and these things we need money to have a decent life in this world. They're all important, but I feel like to take it a little less seriously is what benefits me the most. I'm really supposed to figure out how to have peace in being human, and it's a struggle. I mean, but all I ever wanted was to be at peace with Margie, and that sounds so simple, but I think whatever is our personal, I'm okay. I need to be okay. And to me, the world right now is worse than it was during the pandemic. Um,
I agree.
and I gotta find where I can make a little difference, which is, there's always someone that needs encouragement or someone that I can help. And even if it's in a small way in their life, it might not be a small way. Um, I don't have to be the grandest of saving people or whatever. I just have to make whoever I come in contact with, maybe I can give them some of the sense of contentment I've found, or um, kind of have to accept the way things are and figure out who I want to be in spite of it. Um,
So let me ask you this. If you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one event with in human history with your own eyes, where would you go? What would you love to have seen unfold or happen?
wow.
You could also go to the future, but I think with everything that's going on today, that might not be a good idea.
What would I have liked to have watched unfold? I would have liked to have been at that marathon that the men tried to throw the woman out and she kept pushing him aside. And eventually other guys were pushing him aside and letting her run the marathon.
Yeah,
And she did.
yeah,
She crossed that line.
that's
I
a
think
great
you got to
answer.
be fierce.
Uh-huh. You do. You certainly do. So the Sufferfest, if anybody wants to keep up with progress when you get a publisher and any of the other good work that you're doing, where's the best place for people to go?
Everywhere I am Margie Allman. So on Instagram, Facebook, that's really where I am right now. I would share it there. I'm also the fiction part of me will be an alter ego under the Caribbean Chronicles 3 on TikTok,
Okay.
but that doesn't have any work there yet. So Margie Allman.
Okay. I will put links in the show notes. Margie, thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with the book and with everything that comes your way. It's been great. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
You
It
bet.
was
Thank you.
great.